Hey, welcome to the Analytics Dynasty. I'm your host, Jordan McNamara, and in this video, I wanted to take you through some of the stuff that we have with our player comp engine. Right, it's going to show you all of the different comparable players, and it's a really powerful tool to think about looking at players. All right, so I'll show you what I mean in a second. We'll break it down. It's available over at AOD. You can sign up, try it out. I'm going to put it behind a paywall. It's going behind the paywall just for subscribers here pretty soon, but I do want to make it available so we can check it out and try it. And then while it's still open here. So I wanted to highlight some of this stuff and take a look at it. So one of the guys that's really interesting to me this year is Kadarius Toney. Entering 2021, a little bit of a I think the common perception would have been that he was overdrafted. And when you go back and you think about it, he was overdrafted in terms of your in the NFL draft, right? And people thought that, hey, he shouldn't have been a first round pick, lack of production, and the whole nine. Well, he was really good in a very small sample size. So it ran 197 routes, which isn't a lot, and frankly, with not a great quarterback in Daniel Jones. Well, how did he do? Well, some of the stuff that some of the advanced numbers that I look at, which is targets per route run, right? How many routes are you actually targeted on? What percentage of routes that you run are you actually targeted on? He was at 27%. What's your yards per route run? Again, how many yards do you get for your team with each route that you actually run? And his was 2.14. Let's add a little context into that. Of the receivers with only 100 routes, with at least 100 routes in 2021, only Antonio Brown, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, and A.J. Brown had a higher percentage of their routes that they were targeted on. Kadarius Toney at 27%, also slotted in with Deontay Johnson and Deontay Harris in terms of guys at 27%. So we're looking really at some really good producers. We'll have to do another video about Deontay Harris at some point. He ranked 14th in terms of yards per route run. Again, when you think about the situation that he was dealt with, not necessarily the best overall situation. The guys that were ahead of him, Kupp, Debo, Adams, Antonio Brown, Deontay Harris again, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, Tyler Lockett, Deshaun Jackson, T. Higgins, Cordero Patterson, the former receiver that played for the Raiders, and then right behind him, the only two other guys that came in north of 2 yards per route run, Hill and CeeDee Lamb. So again, it's a really high level of play. Well, what do his comps look like, right? So what does that tell us? Great. We know he was interesting last year. What does that tell us? All right. So we go to the comp engine, right? And I'm going to pull up the screen here. And you go to the comp engine, and I'll actually make it even bigger for you. And you see what, and this is just right up at analytics@dynasty.com. You can go and you can see the, you can go in under subscriptions and look at it. It will tell you, right. So you can go to subscriptions, player comparison engine, just sign up there. And this will get you access to it. Again, do it soon because you're going to get the, because it's going to be just for subscribers here pretty soon. So you go and subscribe, and then you can find it under the AOD applications, AOD player comparison engine. All right. So you go in here, and I've already preset a bunch of it. So I searched in Kadarius Toney. Again, you could go through a whole bunch of other players. I just went through Kadarius Toney. Then I wanted to compare the stats. So you have really two things here. You have stats that you want to use to compare them to other players. And then you have stats that you want to basically know what they look like. Right. So simple way to say that is you want to know, these things about this player. What do players that are similar to him, what did they do the next year? I think is really the way to think about this. And so what I'm analyzing, targets per route run, right? And then it's Y -1, which would be last year. Anything Y is this upcoming year, basically. Y -1 is the prior year. So looking at targets per route run, I want to see the ADOT, and I want to see the yards per route run. And what did I want to find out for? Really, what was I solving for, right? I want to compare them to these players, and I want to know what about the players? Well, I want to know what their ADPs were, right? I want to see sort of how Kadarius Toney fits in value-wise. and I want to use points per game. I want to know basically how many points they score this upcoming year. I was also curious to know how many points they scored last year, right? Because I know that Kadarius Toney did this on low volume and didn't do a ton. So I just wanted to see sort of, right, if I'm projecting a number forward, right, if all these guys scored 20 points per game, well, that's a lot. But if they all scored 20 points per game last year, well, it's a different comparison for Toney, right? So I just wanted to see the context of that. And I wanted to see where they went in the NFL draft. Again, I didn't not using that as a way to compare them. I just wanted to know sort of where the guys that came out, what their average was. All right, so you come down here and it shows you. Oh, and by the way, there's the comps they must compare to something. So you're comparing guys against either similar age or similar experience. So I wanted to know basically rookies, right? I wanted to know guys that are, that are rookies and basically that did this in the rookie season. So Kadarius Toney, again, this will show you, this is his 22. He'll be in year 2. He's 23, or he will be 23 this year. His targets per route run last year was 0.2704, which is 27%. 8 out of 6 yards per route run, 2.14, right? And then it won't show this because this is the projected stuff for this year, which is his ADP and his points per game. And then what we're looking for is we're also looking at last year's points per game. We want to know how it compares to the rest of the guy. He's a 20th pick in the draft. So what do we get? Well, we get some results here, and they're a little all over the place, right? So you get a rookie season Hunter Renfrow, you get Devontae Bess, right? Devon Bess, and these are actually sorted by the closest comps, which is down here in the EUC. That stands for Euclidean distance. Don't worry about it. We got it. But like it's the math behind this. You don't need to get super worried about that. But you see there's some comparisons, right? Devon Bess, Hunter Renfrow, Tyreek Hill, Michael Thomas, interestingly, with this very similar yards per route run as well. Tyreek Hill, again, huge targets per route run, north of 31%. Antonio Brown, actually, you see really early on. Again, there's a lot of stuff that really peaked for him, which would, I go back and I look like would have been kind of good to see some of this stuff early on. Again, he was a limited sample, but he only averaged 3.6 yards per game in that rookie season. Laviska Shenault pops up in here as well. He was a little bit more muted, but as you get further down, these guys are less comparable to Kadarius Toney. So what do you see? All right, well, so this shows you basically the comp summary. It shows you over here basically how the comparisons compare to him, right? So this will tell you, all right, the average targets per route run was 0.25 for the comparisons, and he was 0.27, so pretty close. The ADOT also relatively close, right? They were at 6.9, he was at 6.0, so again, that's pretty close. And your yards per route run, he was better than them at 2.14. They're at 1.99 again. So that shows you basically it's pretty close, right? It's pretty close. And as you see the numbers over here with the Euclidean distance, like they're small numbers, right? So they're relatively close. Well, what does it tell us, right? What's the output? So who cares, right? All right. So we see on average, the positional ADP of these guys is 46, which is interesting. That's kind of in the range that he's going right now. Kadarius Toney in drafts. The points per game they put up 12. Their points per game last year was actually 10.15 against. That's below Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney was at basically 8.3. So they're basically 2 points better than Kadarius Toney was last year on average. But here's the trick, and this is the thing that I'm going to show you how this changes. On average, the guys that did this, the pick 127.2. And I think that speaks right there on average a day 3 pick. And we did a dummy placeholder here for the undrafted guy at 300 as well. So that takes you out just, a little bit more. But you're looking at, on average, these guys are comfortably in day 3. Well, how does this change once we sort of factor in the pedigree of this? So we know that Kadarius Toney is different than these guys, right? We know with all the base rate stuff, we know with all the work that we do that draft position really does matter. Well, what happens once we sort of start doing this and we just put draft round? So we want to add draft round as a comparison to these guys, right? We want to say, all right, we want to know guys that are like Kadarius Toney in targets per route run, in yards per route run, in ADOT, and in NFL draft round, right? That they went in the same round or close to the same round, basically. And what we see here is we get a lot better comps, right? We get a lot more in terms of some of the juice here, right? So we get honestly a really good set of comparisons. Percy Harvin, Brandon Cooks, Brandon Ayuk, CeeDee Lamb, guys with really good rookie years. DJ Moore, Amari Cooper, Hakeem Nicks, Calvin Ridley, Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry. Some really good guys in terms of future hits and the like. And we can also put out here, I'll add in here basically hits over the next 3 years. So let's just see, that's why 1 through 3 hits. So on average, these guys hit 2.1 times over the next 3 years. That's a robust sample. That is a substantial hit. All of them hit at some point in the next 3 years, right? So all of them hit. 100% hit rate for these guys. Pretty wild when you think about it. So again, this is where Toney's at. Again, it's a small sample, but it's really intoxicating. Okay, so how did the comps do? Well, these guys were way below him in terms of the targets per route run. Again, he was at 2. They on average were 0.21. Not a ton of guys that can get up to 0.27, right? So they're below the average. He had a shorter ADOT, right? Their ADOT was 9.5. His was 6.0. And targets and the yards per route run, they were at 1.88. He was at 2.14, so he beat that. And again, they're just a little bit on average over. I think there was one guy or two guys, maybe Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry. So it drags the draft round up a little bit. What do the comps look like? Well, the comps are pretty robust in terms of their ADPs historically at 15.7. So again, we talked about Kadarius Toney in the 30s and the 40s of ADP. His comps, top 15, top 16 guys. So already is a historic discount comparing to some of the guys that what he did, right? Really interesting stuff. On average, their output was 15.16 points per game in this upcoming year and Kadarius Toney. That would be somewhat of a projection for him, right? That's what his comps would be. That would be him going forward. They were better than him last year, and a lot of that was probably volume. A lot of that was probably, he didn't play that much, right? And he left some games early as well. So he was at we talked about this earlier, 8.26, and they were at 12.65. So again, they were about 4 points better than he was as a rookie. So when you're sort of taking this into consideration, you think, okay, some of the volume stuff, that's kind of where that comes from. On average, their draft pick was 26.9, so he actually beat that. And then again, their hits, 2.1. All of these guys hit. All of them. Again, the 10 closest guys to him hit. That is a robust comp set. Again, this is the type of stuff that I think when you look at one of the exercises I actually did was, hey, let's just look at the yards per route run in the 2022 edition of AOD. Let's look at the yards per route run. Let's put it on a graph and let's just see the guys that didn't hit as rookies, what it does in terms of projecting, the odds that they hit or the odds that they hit multiple times here going forward. And what you see with this high of a range, right, of this high of a yards per route run, it's an enormous upside type situation, right? This is really the where you get elite seasons from. Not saying Kadarius Toney is a sure thing. And there's a lot of off-field stuff. There's a lot of stuff in terms of his, a lack of production in college that you can question, right? But in a very small sample size, early in his career, elite on par with some really good comps. We could take out, we could toy a little bit with this. Once you get going into a lot of these, a lot of the comparison stats, right? 4's really probably as much as you want to use. Once you start going more than that, you don't get any guys that are really that close to him. So you got to be careful doing that. We'll just take out ADOT and just see what happens here. So with ADOT, you get, I think it's actually a better comp set in terms of they come a lot more down. Actually, all these guys end up being closer than the other comp set was. Again, that added variable. But again, robust set. Harvin, Mike Evans, AJ Green, Odell Beckham Jr., Dez Bryant, Amari Cooper, Hakeem Nicks, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Michael Crabtree. On average, 2.1 hits here going forward. Top 10 ADPs in their second year in the league, right? When you look at Kadarius Toney, this is what you get shades of, right? They, again, the reason you're getting the discount, right? He averaged 8 points per game. They averaged 14 and a half, right? So that is a big deal. Again, when you look at this, right, their average draft pick was about 14 and a half. He's a little bit less than that, but again, still first round. All of his comps are first round, and none of them actually live up to what he did, right? The average comps didn't live up to what he did. 0.22 or 22% of the routes they were targeted on. He was at 27, and they were at 2.07 yards per route run. He at 2.14. So when you look at this, it's a really intoxicating profile, right? And this is one of the things I want to highlight with him. I like when you look at guys from range like 15 through 40, they're not super different, right? And I like to look at guys that, hey, who could wreck things? Kadarius Toney's absolutely a guy that could wreck some stuff. So I hope that helps. Again, go ahead, give a subscription over to AOD. Get this. This is a type of analysis that we're doing. I'll be doing a lot more of these in terms of, I really like some of this advanced stuff. I'll be doing some more videos, but also this is subscriber content that you will be getting over there. We'll be talking about and really, and really working with and trying to create some edges. So that'll do it for this episode. And I hope you tune in again, subscribe to the channel, give it a rate and review, go over to AOD, give a subscription, and trial if you want on the player comp engine. Fool around, get caffeinated, put the family to bed and stay up late to run some comps, and make sure you get your coffee brewed because you'll want to keep going. All right, that'll do it for this episode. Until next time, continue embracing the variance. We'll talk again very soon.